Alright, so here we are for round 7 of the SRL F1 2018 Championship here in Singapore at the Marina Bay Street Circuit for the 7th round of this season. As you can see, the championship standings after 6 rounds are Francis McGinn and Lewis Marshall, both equal on points, leading the way. However, if you have seen the previous episode in Australia, you'll know that Lewis Marshall has been suspended from SRL for the rest of the season, and also Francis actually crashed out in Australia after tangling up with Jan Holm, and also he is not participating for this race here in Singapore. So those things are massive for the championship, and they're really going to affect the championship results. And so probably a blessing for us that Francis is not going to score points for 2 races in succession, and also with Lewis Marshall not participating anymore for the rest of the season. So coming into this round then, we have got a very good chance of potentially even taking over the lead in the championship with McGinn and Marshall not participating. So we are currently 3rd in the standings, but anyway, round 7 of the season then here for the Singapore Grand Prix. You can see in qualifying I am going out on a set of medium tires for a set of soft tires for the start of this session, because I think the tire allocation for this weekend is hyper softs, ultra softs, and softs, and so you only get one set of ultra softs, and I didn't want to qualify on hyper softs because the tire wear on hyper softs is really very, how do you put that, the hyper softs wear off very quickly. So that's why I decided to do a soft run at the beginning of the session as I invalidate my current NX lap. It's always very annoying to do when you exceed the track limits at the end of your lap in the final corner. So I decided to do a long run. You can see I had quite a lot of fuel in the car as well. Still 5 laps remaining, even though this is already my 4th flying lap. So I wasn't pushing at all. I was just using this first run as a bit of a practice run, because like I said before, I don't want to qualify on these tires. I want to qualify on the ultra soft tire, and because I only have one set, it's basically going to be a one-shot qualifying. So you can see here I posted a lap time of 41.5, which is currently my quickest lap. Well, I think I went faster in a lap that I invalidated, but anyway, it doesn't matter that much because I of course wanted to avoid getting into the top 10 on these tires, because if I mess up my lap now on the ultra soft tires, of course I will be qualified on a set of softs that is very worn out as well. So I didn't want to risk having a time that's potentially good enough for a top 10. So anyway, 40 seconds left in the session. We are behind Vasilios Belichotis. I think he is around 4th or 5th position in the championship. Anyway, with 30 seconds to go, this is going to be our final lap in the session and our only really qualifying lap. So the pressure is on to deliver on this final lap, because otherwise we will start down in 17th position or lower. We've still got Sam van Elven behind us, who has also done the same thing as I did, starting the session on a set of softs. Anyway, into the middle sector then. ERS up into hot lap mode and the fuel mix into max. We go down into overtake to gain a bit of speed on the end of this straight here. Now down into high deployment. We actually go purple in the first sector as Bart Cadelda now posts the quickest time of a 1:35.5. Into this corner then, very tricky as well on the power. It's easy to lose the back end or understeer wide into the wall as we now skip into the final sector. ERS deployment back into hot lap mode, final corner to go. Then very easy to cut the corner there. Luckily we didn't do that. As we come up to the line, we improve to 2nd position from P18. So just 2 tenths behind the quickest time posted by Bart Cadelda. So that's our 2nd on the grid then, with a 1:35.7. On the front row with Sandro Dullis behind us and Vasilios Belichotis in 4th place. My teammate Jura also doing a pretty good job there in 9th position, 2.3 seconds of the pace. And I think it's Sam van Elven there rounding off the grid in 17th, 4 seconds down. I think there is one person behind it in 18th position. Anyway, start of the race then. This strategy is pretty weird. Ultra softs to hyper softs to ultra softs again. I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to skip out the ultra or the hyper stint there, and I'm going to switch the ultra soft run to a soft run. And I'm going to start on the ultra soft tires because I qualified on these. And actually, the projected race time was a little bit slower compared to the 2-stop, so that's very interesting. We know that the tire wear is pretty severe around this track, But you know, my mindset coming into this race was I knew that the Bonza was probably the way to go, but I also knew that I had to be very careful on the tires because we know what happened 2 rounds ago in Yes Marina where I overheated the tires. You know, this track is also very well known for, you know, overheating tire problems. It's very easy to do that here, so we're gonna have to watch out for that. Anyway, we've completed the formation lap, and we will shortly start the 7th round of the season once everybody has formed up from second place on the grid then, with Karakoram in front and Sandut behind us on the second row of the grid as we're waiting for everybody to line up on the grid. For 31 laps then here at the Marina Bay Street Circuit, the longest race on the entire calendar. Position 2 out of 18, 5 lights are on, and away we go for the Singapore Grand Prix. Bart Cadel has a pretty good start, and he's going to maintain the lead into turn 1. We have a bit of a look there up the inside, but Cadel holds on and maintains the lead. We've got a Force India there, and Sando right behind us. Actually, Bart Cadel has a pretty poor exit out of the second corner. And we now get past him around the outside here into turn 4, but we're going too wide. We almost lose the back end. And Cadel is still alongside us as we go on to the back straight. ERS down into overtake to try to get as much straight line speed as possible as we now come into the 5th corner on the track. We couldn't outbrake Bart Cadel there as we have a bit of a moment on the back end, and we settle into P2 with Vasilios Belitshotis right behind us then. So yeah, we've got quite a lot of fuel to play with as well. I overfueled the car by 2.5 laps, and we should be able to you know, save a bit of fuel and ERS in the middle sector and probably burn the fuel and ERS on the straights. As Bart Cadel actually goes a little bit wide there and clips the ball a little bit. I don't think if he's got damage because of that, but that definitely compromised his momentum a little bit there coming through that section of the track. He's weaving about. I think he might be testing if he has front wing damage. Anyway, we can't make a move just yet. So Cadel, the reigning SRL champion, of course, still in the lead of this race. I think he actually managed to win a previous race in Australia. So, you know, his return to SRL is looking pretty promising, and he basically continues where he left off at the end of last year when he took the championship from Killian Brady, who decided to pull the plug just before the end of the season to focus on esports. So rounding off the first lap then, ERS back into high deployment. Let's see if we can stick with the pace of Bart Cadel. Like I said before, I don't know if he's got damage or not, but if he hasn't, that's of course going to make our life a bit easier to try and stick with the pace of Cadel there. So yeah, nothing has really changed. I think everyone is still in the race and has managed to get through the first lap. I do see a couple of cars in the pit lane, so probably some drivers have picked up a bit of damage. That's almost inevitable around a circuit like this, of course, being a pretty tight street circuit. Again, we're gonna see if the Ultrasols wear off quickly, because if the tire wear is okay, then I may stretch it to go longer as Vasilios there goes up the inside. I couldn't really fight it that much. I decided not to also fight it that much because I didn't want to lose too much time here. I was more thinking about, you know, the long run, trying to just do the quickest races I can instead of, you know, trying to defend from Vasilios and letting Bart Cadel run off into the distance. We've got the Mercedes reserve driver Luke Smith behind us. I think he is filling in at Force India for Francis McKinney. He's basically a reserve driver for all the Mercedes powered cars, as he actually dives up the inside there into the hairpin, and I really had to you know, open the steering there for a brief moment to avoid making contact. That was very unexpected there from Luke Smith. We tried to attack back up the inside, but it wasn't really the move wasn't really on there. So we've dropped to P4 now, and yeah, we are dropping through the field pretty quickly. It seems like we don't really have the pace here at this first phase of the race. And Luke saw the opportunity to dive down the inside into the hairpin. A pretty rare overtaking move there. You don't really see that much overtakes into there, but I guess the gap was sorted there. I did have to you know, make a step with the wheel, but anyway, it doesn't matter that much. It was, I'd say, hard but fair. That overtake that Prying Stingray made into there. Opening up the third lap of this race then, 42.5 DRS will be enabled on this lap, so let's try to stick with Praying Stingray at the front, in front of us to you know, sort of drag us along, because maybe, of course, very often you can sort of lap a little bit quicker than what you can do on your own when you are right behind another car, you know, just benefiting from the slipstream and the DRS. We actually try to go up the inside here into this corner. Can we brake late enough? It doesn't look like we can, so we hold back for now. I did have a bit of a run there on him on the back straight, again having a look up the inside, but thinking better of it. Luke Smith has a pretty poor exit out of there, but we are on the outside of this corner, which isn't really the place you want to be. Luke Smith basically parks it on the apex there, which blocks me from getting a better exit. So it's still P4 for the moment. Sander Dulli is behind us, probably looking on this battle with a bucket of popcorn there. I think he is just waiting for probably Luke or myself to attack each other or making a mistake. Talking about mistakes, Luke Smith runs wide there into the hairpin, and it now gives us the run on this sort of second back straight on the track, and that promotes us back into P3 again. Luke Smith has a look up the inside, but we get the better exit out of that corner there because we had the line on the outside, and we're able to put the power down earlier than Luke Smith. So we are back up into a podium position then on the third lap of this race. But all of the battling with Luke has allowed Vasilios and Abad to break away at the front of this at this race. They're already on the fourth lap, I guess about 3 seconds in front of us. We'll see the gap as we come over the line. It's 2.7 seconds to Vasilios Belachotis, so probably about 3 seconds to Bad Kedalda as we open up lap 4 of this race. Sander Dullis gets past Luke Smith behind us, probably down into turn 1. And so he has now worked his way up into 4th position. You can see already it looks like P3 is probably already the highest we can possibly get in this race, unless there is some sort of safety car in this race, or unless Vasilios or Bad Kedalda make some sort of mistake as break into turn 4 on lap 4. You can see Bad Kedalda actually runs off onto the escape road there, and I get a blue screen because I had some sort of issue with my wheel, but I think Bad Kedalda, he sort of outbraked himself or something like that and run off into the escape road, so that's gonna give me a free second position with Vasilios now leading the way. I'm gonna talk about that issue as well. It's something that happened to me quite often during this race, and also in the previous couple of races, where sometimes my wheel would press randomly the share button on the wheel, and it would open up the PlayStation menu and also reset my degrees of rotation. So I had to press the mode button and the D-pad at the same time to get that back to like 360 degrees to line it up again. So that cost me a couple seconds there. Anyway, we are trying to defend from Sander Dullis, who is now getting past us on the DRS on the back straight here into second position. I can't really do anything. I couldn't brake late enough there to attack back up the inside. It's probably not really worth the risk to make a dive for second position in this phase of the race. So Sander Dullis now takes over second position and can now chase after Vasilios Belachotis in the lead. I was trying to be very conservative with the tires as well, because I knew how easy it is on this track, like I said before, to overheat the tires, and I didn't want to repeat what I did in Yes Marina, where I completely fell back through the order when the tires started to overheat. So lap 7 then, Sander's actually pulled away from us a little bit now. The gap is 1.8 seconds as he is still chasing down Vasilios at the front of this race. And as we now skip to lap 7, the gap is now 2.9 seconds with Leslie van der Stap behind us. You can see the tire temperature is still pretty okay. But I was almost driving sort of like it was, almost an outlap or something. I was just, really being smooth with my throttle and brake applications. And even with the steering into corners, I wasn't really, steering with a lot of lock. And you can see there's still the backhand kicking out a little bit. I just tried to hold back as much as I could to conserve the tires. And you can see there as well, Sandro has actually got past Vasilios now for the lead of this race. And so for the first time in a very long while, he is leading an SRL race. And still, the top 3 after 7 laps is still quite close together. I think we are, we can see Sander and Vasilios there going underneath the tunnel. So we are still just a couple seconds behind as we now skip to lap 8. The order hasn't really changed that much. We've now got the other Ferrari of Dion Stahl behind us. And you can see as well the rear right tire is starting to get a little bit warm there. It was getting into the yellow zone, about 105 degrees, 104 now. So it's still under control, but it is sort of starting to get past the optimum temperature, so I'm gonna have to be careful with that, because if I start losing the back end too many times, as I have a bit of a slide there, that's exactly what I didn't want. Of course, as soon as you start sliding too much, you're gonna overheat the tires, and when the tires get too hot, you're gonna slide even more, and you sort of get into this never-ending cycle, like which I landed myself in ES Marina. So I really want to avoid that. So that's why I was being very careful, especially with the rear tires, but also on the braking and with my steering inputs as well, to just minimize the amount of slipping I was doing with the tires. Opening up lap 10 then, still the gap is staying pretty much the same to Vasilios. It's still about 2.5 seconds. and the tire wear and tire temperatures are still looking relatively okay. Still about 105 degrees for the right rear tire, so that seems to be the only tire that is sort of having some trouble with trying to keep itself in the operating temperature. You can see now we have closed the gap to Facilios. We're actually inside the DRS now. Once again, a bit of a back-end loss there coming through turn 3. So we are into overtake mode on the ERS and in Rich Mix in the fuel mode. You can see a bit of a slide there once again coming through turn 4. We have definitely closed the gap, so it seems like Facilios might also be struggling with tire wear as we once again slide the back end out of the corner, as does Facilios. So now on lap 11, once again, a bit sideways there coming through that corner, but yeah, it seems like Facilios is having the same issues as what I have, maybe a little bit worse, because, the tire temperature is now 106 degrees, so we really have to be careful. You can see still now, as we are going to the final sector of lap 11, I really started pushing, and you can see there once again sliding. This was the lap, I think, where I came in for my stop, so I was like, my mindset was like, I'm just going to try to push on this lap to see if I can actually push without overheating the tires. But you can see immediately as soon as I started pushing, the tire started to overheat and I started to slide around way too much. 108 degrees now, so I'm definitely going to come in. You can just see how much I'm having to wrestle the car through the corners. Once again, losing the back end there, coming out of the penultimate corner. Facilios does the same thing, and we will both go into the pit lane as the rear tire is now onto 109 degrees. So we will go onto the soft tires then, the hardest compound available for this race. And we actually almost jumped Facilios in the pit lane. We have to jump on the brakes there, or well, our AI car did. And so we didn't get past Facilios. For some reason, he then braked in the pit lane, which slowed me down as well. But anyway, we rejoined the track in P4, so we have effectively lost one position, but that was of course from someone who is probably still yet to make their stop. I think there are also a couple drivers that are doing 2 stops, but I don't think that's the way to go really. I'm just going to try to make this one stop work. But again, on these soft tires now, I really tried to be as smooth as I could. I tried to just not do what I did in Yes Marina. That's why the title is what it is as well. I sort of had learned from my mistake in Abu Dhabi, and I just didn't push at all. It was so difficult because when you're in a race, you just want to try to drive as quickly as what you can, but I really tried to hold back and sort of resist the temptation of trying to push and just almost drive like it almost felt like I had to drive slowly, and I sort of had to a degree, but it was more about driving smoothly and smartly, I guess, because we have seen in a previous stint, as soon as I started pushing, the tires, or especially the rear tires, are going to overheat, and it's going to slow me down even more. So probably, it sounds pretty weird, but driving slowly was probably the quicker way in this race in terms of the lap times. You can see now the gap to Facilios, it was basically staying at the exact same 2.5 second mark. You can see we're skipping quite a few laps now, still about 2.7 seconds, 2.5 seconds now as we open up lap 21. And yeah, we were both being pretty consistent, and the gap kept fluctuating a little bit, but we couldn't really close it down. You can see it's still about 2.8 seconds, 3.5 seconds actually now as we open up lap 25. The gap is back to 3.1 as we open up lap 26. 27 improving to 40.3. The gap is down to 2 seconds, and now the gap is up to 2.2 seconds again. Lap 29 then, and this was the phase of the race as we now go on to lap 30, where we started closing the gap down. You can see we've closed it back to 7:10, so for the first time in a very long time, basically for the first time since the first stint back about 20 laps ago, I think it was. For the first time since about lap 10 or 11, we've closed the gap back to under a second. So we are back into the DRS of Facilios, and it seems like again he was probably struggling a bit more with his tires than what I was, because I was being so smooth. And we were actually going purple into the first sector, but I completely outbrake myself there, lock up the inside front and run it wide. So it was a bit of a silly mistake there, getting a bit too impatient or a bit too excited there to try and get past Facilios. I was probably shocked by the fact that I said a purple first sector, to be honest. But anyway, we are definitely in with a shot of getting second place here. And, we are a bit of an outsider for the championship, so picking up some extra points could be crucial at the end of this series. So at this point, I was really pushing as hard as I could because, we've only got 1.5 laps to go. If I start to overheat the tires now as well, it doesn't really matter, because you can see there we've got about a 31-second gap to Dion. So even if I mess this up, we are still pretty safe and secured in P3 for a podium. So we missed out on the podium last time out in Melbourne. behind Vasilius as well, because I picked up a 3-second penalty and just missed out by a couple tenths in the end. But this time we are definitely not going to let a podium slip through our fingers, and potentially even a second place. So we are very low on fuel, as you can see, minus 0.2 laps, so I'm going to have to save quite a lot of fuel, which is going to be very difficult when trying to overtake Vasilius as well. So it's looking to be very difficult to actually get this position, sliding out of the final corner there as you open up the DRS for the final lap of this race. Then 32 seconds to the end, so we don't have to worry about him. Into turn 1 then for the final time, trying to push as much as possible. I get caught on the curb there a little bit. I completely kick out the rear end, and that's cost me crucial drive come onto the straight then. And so P2 is unfortunately a bit of a lost cause now. Still trying to push on. Once again, you can see the backhand started to kick out many times in a row now, coming through every corner basically. And you can see towards the end of this race, I didn't have enough fuel to actually make it, so it wouldn't have really made a difference. And we luckily had a big gap to René Vanderstep now, because Dion Staal actually crashed out on the final lap into the hairpin, which was very unfortunate for him. And Dion's teammate Sandro actually was the best out of all of us in managing the tires. And he took his first victory since Season 1 back on F1 2014. You know, it took him several years to win a race again, but finally he has done it in SRL. And it was good to see Sandro finally back on the top step of a podium in an SRL race. So, you know, who knows, he could maybe be an outsider in a championship with Francis and Lewis Marshall not scoring any points for the previous 2 races. And of course, like I said before, Lewis Marshall isn't going to for the rest of the season. So yeah, Vasilios and I both had a 3-second penalty, so in that regard we were racing each other for position. But when we look at the championship now, you can see that we have actually taken over the lead again, just like we did after round 3 in Sochi. And so we're now leading the way again, 89 points compared to Francis's 83 points. So yeah, that's a very positive thing to take away from this race in Singapore. And also the race in Yas Marina was maybe even a blessing in disguise, because my mistake I made there probably made me more wary of that in this race, and it probably made me achieve a podium here. I think if I wouldn't have done that race in Yas Marina where I struggled badly with the tires, I wouldn't have taken this approach in this race, and I would have probably done the same thing as what I did in Yas Marina. So yeah, that's why the title of this video is what it is. So thank you very much for watching. That's been it for round 7 then of the SRL F1 2018 Championship. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Remember to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.